Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks, man. How you
It's
doing?
great. It's summer vacation season. We're actually, my family and I are about to leave for a little vacay. Excited to stay in an Airbnb. And we just got to talk to some Airbnb owners, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's wild. Every summer for the last several years, like my wife and I have that conversation. We stay in a short-term vacation rental, and we're like, "Oh, we should buy one of
Right?
these. This is the coolest thing." We haven't pulled the trigger yet, but today's guest did. Right? They stayed in short-term rentals a time or two, and then they decided they're going to become owners. And not only did they decide and jump in, but they had an amazingly positive experience jumping into this first short-term rental property of theirs.
Yeah, now I can't get it out of my head again. And I'm sure I'm going to be talking about it the whole drive down on vacation. But we had Matt and Meghan Dreher on today, two individuals that I actually met through our YFP real estate investing Facebook group. Loved their story about turning pharmacy ownership into real estate investor ownership and what that looked like for them. And it just wanted to make sure we shared their story on the podcast because it was a really positive one and just really cool to see it transpire.
Yeah, they had some really good tips in there. Like there's a few minutes that we spent towards the end talking about tools for automation that maximize pricing and profit. Because I feel like it can be really difficult to figure out the math on a short term rental compared to a long term rental. And so they had some great tips about how to do that that helps them to find that balance between all the DIY things that you can do, and then when it's helpful to pay for resources along the way to make sure that you're maximizing your investment.
Yeah. So this is a good one. If you're looking for inspiration on the short-term rental side, definitely listen along. Again, Megan and Matt do a fantastic job of just bringing that inspiration. If you're thinking more about the long-term space, just to put a plug in here quickly, David and I are getting close to launching the next round of our none-to-one real estate investing course, designed to teach you how to purchase your first rental property. Again, similar to how Megan and Matt did it. The difference is we're really focused on the long-term rental space. So if that's something you're interested in, you want to learn more about it, that course is coming out soon. Head on over to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/none to one, and we'll put that in the show notes, but none to one, all spelled out. And you can join the wait list. You can make sure that you don't miss a thing and you're the first one to hear about it as it becomes available. So if long-term rentals are your thing, definitely check that out. Yourfinancialpharmacist.com/none to one. And if you're more interested in learning about the short-term rentals, do not miss this episode with Matt and Megan, and we'll take you to it right now. Enjoy. Hey, Meg, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
How's it
this is
going?
awesome. Great. We connected on Facebook and just I knew I had to have you guys on. New parents, early investors. This is a cool time to get you guys on the recording. So I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, we're excited. Thank you.
Why don't we jump right in? Give everybody a little bit of background on your professional pharmacy story to kind of get us started.
Okay. You want to take on?
So I went to pharmacy school kind of late in life, about 30. I grew up in independent pharmacy. My dad has been a pharmacist and owned his own store for 40 plus years now. He still works there. So I went to Lee Calm, graduated in 2015, took over, got more interested in the business aspect of it. Did some business training, and Megan and I bought our second location about two and a half years ago.
Good. So I went to Duquesne and I graduated in 2017. So it's a couple years behind Matt. And as we'll kind of touch base, we grew up in the same town here, but didn't really know each other. So Matt had his RX books, his pharmacy books from school, and studying for the boards that he was looking to get rid of. And I was getting ready to take my boards after he had already been through that. So that was kind of how we met. So that was just, a little background there. But so anyways, I graduated then. I went straight into retail. So I worked for a couple chains while he worked at the local independent, and I grew more and more jealous of his lifestyle versus mine. So, like he said, 2.5 years ago, January 2020, just right before COVID hit, we bought that pharmacy together, and we've been chugging along ever since. So that's kind of our pharmacy background.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And then from buying a pharmacy to buying real estate, it sounds like it wasn't too much before you got into real estate. I'm curious about your real estate why and your journey in real estate so far.
Yeah. So I guess it was more so my interest at first, somewhat of the real estate investing side of it. Matt was always looking at like the MLS and stuff and looking at places available, but we kind of just never put two and two together. We were just always interested in what was for sale in the area. So really, YFP was the reason why I got into real estate investing. So it ultimately started was because I went to Duquesne. I went to a private school. I, bared a lot of student loans. So that was my original interest in YFP, was trying to get a handle on those. And then your podcast kind of filtered into real estate investing podcasts. And I was like, oh, maybe, this is something we could look at. So then that triggered my interest with Bigger Pockets because it was mentioned a few times. So then we became a pro member on Bigger Pockets and just kind of dove head first. Our store that we purchased is like 80 minutes north of us. So I was getting in a lot of drive time and was just listening to as many podcasts as my brain could handle. And then just kind of at the end of the day, Matt was like, so what podcast did you listen to today? And we would just talk about it and like brainstorm. And it just kind of evolved from there. And, he had this opportunity with his family for us to kind of start with our first property. And that's just pretty much how it started. And now we're here.
And so today you guys
she wanted to have 30 properties by the time she was 30. And I was kind of bored. But I was on board.
I love that.
I like very different things. I hate doing the same thing every day. So
yeah, it's definitely nice to have that break from the pharmacy life and then to build something else. Like you've got this whole business that you're running day to day, but it's a different type of business. It's a different mindset, different skill set required. So I think a lot of people resonate with that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys decided to move into the short-term rental space, right? You have the short-term rental today?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So talk to me a little about that. So I think a lot of people who are, again, busy pharmacists thinking, okay, real estate investing might be a good way to diversify my retirement, or it might be a good way to supplement my income. But then again, I'm super busy. I'm a pharmacist. I can't run this. But you guys are owners of 2 pharmacy locations and able to pull this off. So why choose short-term rental space? Why did you go that direction?
So as Matt mentioned, I had the 30 by 30 goal. And that was, to get to that goal, we were going to look at, like fourplexes, maybe some small apartment complexes and whatnot to get there. So I guess one issue was possibly capital, that we didn't really have the capital to get into such multiple large properties for that. But then another was an opportunity that was kind of just sitting in front of us that we didn't really, take into fruition that it was there until we decided to look at the short-term rental. So I'll give the rest to Matt and just let him kind of talk about it since it's in his family's possession.
Yeah, so the big thing in our area, it's very rural, but the river is beautiful. Everything is beautiful, but the river has gotten more and more popular over the last several years. And my parents had a piece of property sitting on the river with an abandoned cabin that I always kind of wanted to do something with, whether it was for us or to rent out. So we've stayed at tons of Airbnbs in our past, and I was like, well, we should get it ready to Airbnb. And I wanted to do it kind of bare minimum. And then Meghan popped in and she was tearing out walls and doing everything that I wasn't really ready to do. But we got it put together, and it turned out phenomenal, really, inside. We've even had guests say that it's kind of like an Instagrammable house.
Cool. And when was that up and running then? How long has that been operating?
We got up and running in September of 2021.
Okay. So almost a year under your belts by the time this goes live. That's great.
So, and it took off. We had it live on Airbnb with a potential start date, and it was honestly a studded wall with no windows in it, and it said coming soon. And we just one day we just started getting all these like inquiries and bookings, and so we kind of knew by the time that it started that it was going to do good, and we were already looking for our next project.
And so talk to me a little bit too about, so you said your parents owned the piece of property. Did you purchase it from them or just kind of take it over so that you could start running the Airbnb there, or how did that work?
We just did take it over at first, on good terms with family, so
Sure.
either party was scared. But my parents are carrying the loan at like a 3% interest, and Megan and I fronted the money for all the remodel.
Nice.
The money and the work.
What I love about that is that you took what was an opportunity that was in front of you that a lot of people looked at and said, oh, this would be a ton of work and we'll get there eventually. And like once you guys partnered up on it, and again, Megan had that mindset shift, it was all of a sudden off and running. And so you took a property that wasn't being used for anything, and now you're contributing to the family, you're contributing to your own retirement. Like it's really cool to see that shift take place. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I think that there's something, because we've talked with a lot of guests that mention podcasts as a way that gets them started and gets them going. One of the things that I feel like I'm sensing in the way that you're talking about this is this persistent motivation also, because not a lot of people start off with I want 30 by 30 kind of goal. Like that's a big goal. It's an impressive goal. And not a lot of people jump into the short-term rental space. Not a lot of people jump into the short-term rental space and do all the work themselves. Like there's a lot of hurdles there that you stayed motivated through. So I'm curious if you could share like how you leverage podcasts or conversation with each other, how you maintain that motivation to not only get through that, but get through that and say, I want another, instead of get through that and say, oh, I'm so done.
I'll let Megan take the podcast part.
I honestly think that we both lift each other up at different times. So, I went on that spree for 6 months or so where I was, pounding the podcasts, reading books that they recommended, running scenarios with the calculators on BP, all kinds of stuff. And then, I don't know, I got kind of busy, and then Matt was more into like the book reading and the personal motivation, self-motivation and stuff. So I think that we both do a pretty good job of like, when one gets a little bit lazy, the other one picks up the motivation part and helps to bring us both through. So right now I'm a little bit lazy with a newborn and Matt's been doing a lot of reading. So he's been kind of carrying us like the past few months with that. So it's definitely both sides, and we definitely work together to kind of pull each other out of the ditches when we need it.
Yeah, and it happened again later in life. I turned into a learner. Like, I love to learn everything. And I was never like that before. I was never even necessarily motivated before. So that's taken a big change in the last 5 years or so. And then part of the push in getting some of this done is the stress of pharmacy, and especially independent pharmacy, financially, and looking to diversify and get my mind off that. It really helped I was putting in 20 hours on a Saturday and Sunday finishing up the Airbnb. It was fun. I was learning something, and it kept my mind off my day to day.
I think that's so important. We don't get a chance to interview a lot of couples. And so I think this is really cool to be able to see how you guys inspire each other and help each other grow that, and just where that can take you. And it's really cool to see where it's taken you in both pharmacy and now into real estate. And again, as new parents now too, right? So that's pretty darn cool to see how that's taken off. One of the things I think that comes to mind too, as we think about where you guys are located, right? Kind of a more rural area. A lot of people, when they think Airbnb, they think vacation destination, right? You got to be on the lake, you got to be on the beach. You mentioned the river. Was that the motivation that said, look, we can Airbnb here because there is a draw, right? We are pulling people in. Or did you just say, there's already a need, we're seeing other people requesting it, and there's not any places available? Like, what made you feel like, I'm confident this is going to get somebody to rent it?
I'd say it was a combination of both. So the river is definitely a draw, like Matt said. Within the past 5 or so years, we've just seen a huge uptick in traffic in town. And, with us being such a small town, so Emlenton probably has about 700 residents. So very, very small. But, on the weekends when you see, Main Street's packed, there's kayakers everywhere, there's bikers everywhere. We just knew that it was drawing people, and it was drawing people from Pittsburgh, from Cleveland, from State College, a drivable distance, but getting out of those cities. So the river, as you'd mentioned, is a big draw. So we have kayakers, canoers, that whole thing. There is the part of the Rails to Trails here. So we're the trailhead for the Allegheny River Trail, which spans many miles, but it's technically a connection from Pittsburgh to Erie as a bike trail. So we get a bunch of pedal bikers that come through. And then there was a need. So, we're, like he said, we're always traveling and we use Airbnb for our personal lives. So we were kind of, interested, and we checked out Airbnb for what was available here, and we could count on one hand what was available when we first started. Now it's a little bit different. I'd say there's probably, upwards of 10 to 15 places that are local. But they range, from little places like us. There's a bed and breakfast in town, so taking a completely different aspect. There's some big, nice cabins that are around too, on the river, off the river. So anyways, we felt pretty confident just from both of those aspects, at least in the summer. So we were very skeptical for what it was going to look like in the winter. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we were very successful our first winter. So we were happy with that, and just where we've come so far with it.
I would say for us, we've kind of focused on river properties right now just because, they don't make any more land, and they especially don't make any more land on the river for us. So that's been a focus, but I really think anything in the area, like even if it was, I've kind of had like my eye out for, maybe like 3 to 5 acres just in the woods, just a secluded place, I think would do just as well.
At least in this COVID era, people are wanting to get away, be by themselves, that type of thing. So it's kind of expanded our thoughts on people gravitating towards this area. And we've also, explored the possibility of like some glamping or some tiny home type of opportunities in the area, bring some of those kind of niche things too. So that might be on the horizon for us.
Very cool.
Yeah, you've got me really curious about the numbers at this point. Particularly, I think of a lot of these beachfront destinations as being really expensive. I don't know how that works in more of the rural communities. So I'd love to hear kind of how the by the night or by the week or however you choose to run this, and then summer versus winter, like you mentioned, how that's panning out for you.
So I'll take this one on. This deal that we did with this house. So as Matt mentioned, we had a private loan from his dad. So he purchased the property 3 to 5 years prior to us, and he just turned it over to us for what he paid for it. So that ended up being $65,000 that we purchased the land and the original structure for. So that is riverfront, and it's probably sits on just about an acre, maybe a little bit less. So it's pretty small amount of area, but right there, how much river frontage?
150 feet of river frontage, probably.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a decent amount. It's not a huge amount, but it's a decent amount, and it's on the far edge of the rest of his family's property. So our guests are kind of down there by themselves, so they like that. So, anyways, we purchased that portion of it for $65,000. Our remodel costs, we were into it for about $43,000, so about all in. We were looking at $108,000 for the purchase and the remodel. So, what that looked at in terms of the house, so the cabin itself originally was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. It had a very small screened-in front porch, and a very, very small kitchen, and a pretty decently sized sitting living area. It was probably uninhabited maybe 15 to 20 years. So as you can imagine, it wasn't in the greatest shape inside. Being on the river, pretty much everything is damp, water damage, stuff like that. He had wanted to kind of just like do new drywall, keep the rooms the way they were, kind of utilize the space as it was. And I was like, no, we have to, like, this has to be big. We have to attract people by the pictures, and we have to bring them in. So it can't just be like your grandma's cabin that we're going to have people over, even though it's functional. So with that being said, we tore out some walls like he had mentioned. We pretty much tore off the entire front of the cabin and replaced it with all picture windows. There was no deck, so we added a complete front deck to the entire front of the house. Added like a small like fire pit area, outdoor area. Did like our own little walk-in kitchen, bathroom, single bath. So we made it into a 2-bed, 1-bath. So we really wanted that extra bedroom to try to bring in like 2 couples, or it's small enough that, one couple could easily utilize it. So we did all that, and we started our reno in like April 2021. And as he had mentioned, we were listed and renting September. Labor Day was actually our first weekend. So
Nice.
Matt and I did as much of the renovation as we could ourselves. It was definitely a learning experience. We have many certificates in YouTube electric, YouTube plumbing, YouTube drywall, you name it. We also had the help from a couple friends who knew what they were doing in that area and came in and gave us their expertise. And then we have a really good contractor who has been amazing for us. He did a lot of the rough stuff, so a lot of the new framing. They put up the siding for us, built the deck frame, things like that. But I'd say we probably did about 75% of the reno work. So as he said, the 20 hours of weekend work, we definitely spent it here. So it was labor intensive, but it was a labor of love, and we definitely are happy with the outcome of it. So that was kind of like.
Nate and I have been staring at pictures of this thing, and it is gorgeous. Like, as I'm looking at the pictures and you tell me $43,000, I'm like, how in the world did you do that for $43,000?
Yeah, it looks
but it makes sense. You did so much
incredible.
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll have to put the link in the show notes so everybody else can stare at the truly Instagram worthy pictures. Yeah. Man.
Actually, let's not share it.
Square feet.
Yeah, that's true. That helps when it's a little bit smaller footprint. But yeah, I don't want to share this, David, because I think I want to book it. I'm only like 2 hours away from them, so I think we should hold this closer to the vest.
Hey, there you go. Fall's coming up, and it's a great time to come visit.
I'm serious. I can see my wife and my kids on this deck. I mean, it's like right on the water. I mean, you can't beat this spot, guys. It's really cool.
There you go. We'll take you on a jet boat ride too while you're here.
That's perfect. I love it. But I mean, seriously, it's impressive to see what you guys were able to accomplish. I mean, with, again, doing a lot of the work yourself, doing some of this with a contractor, but it's really cool to go from basically an abandoned cabin to, like you said, very Instagrammable, ready to go rental house. I'm curious, how does the other expenses work out then now that you've got it up and running and the renovation's all done? The monthly expenses, how do those balance out with the income that you've been generating from it?
Yeah. So right now, well, I guess in 2021, so we grossed just shy of 13,000. So that was September, October, November, December. So with that, we were very optimistic that kind of our goal this year was to gross 60,000 on a 2-bed, 1-bath cabin. So we're pretty much on par for that this year. So far in 2022, we've grossed 30,600.
Nice.
And our expenses, nothing or short of paying his parents, so we didn't include that. But like our everyday expenses, utilities, we're just under 10,000 for the year. So we're netting roughly about 20,000.
That's incredible.
Thus far. So that's been exciting. And, we've taken on a couple more properties, and this house has pretty much done the job of paying the bills of the other houses while we're working to do the renovations and like keep the utilities running for something that's not pulling the income yet. So we haven't really taken anything out of the house yet, but we just keep putting that net income into the other properties. So that's been nice and, made our lives a little bit easier and a little less stress. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool mindset that, there's a lot of folks out there that talk about using real estate as a way like to jump out of a day job that you hate or something like that. But I love talking with pharmacists that are, I love my pharmacy job. This gives me a different gear to get in. And because you're not relying on that income to put food on the table, you are able to grow that much faster and you are able to jump into those other deals much faster. So now you got me curious. This one went, exceedingly well. So you were able to jump into something else. So what are these next steps that you're taking? What do those deals look like?
So we were ready for our next deal pretty quick after we were up and running, or maybe even a little bit before. And the next deal that came through was another rehab project. So we got that, and we knew that we didn't have the money to start working on it right away. And shortly after that, we came across a turnkey property that had been remodeled in the last year. They Airbnb'd it a little bit, but they predominantly used it themselves. So we hopped on that thinking, we're just going to buy it. It's going to cover the mortgage, give us some cash flow, and give us some time. Again, Meghan was ready to maybe pawn off some of the work on some laborers, but I think I want to do a couple of these just to be safe. So that's where we're at. We've got the turnkey one running now, and we're working through the rehab one as we have money. And I guess in the mix there, we do, since Meghan wanted to start in long-term rentals, we did buy one. But since all this has transpired, we've changed directions. So we're just looking to finish up the rehab now, flip that house and sell it, and have more money to either finish one of the short-term rentals or go into our 4th short-term rental.
Yeah, the goal hopefully with that one, because he had mentioned, so just a little bit on that, is we got that from a close friend, went through an estate, so we got a pretty smoking deal on that. And we purchased it for $25,000, and we don't have all the numbers totally in yet, but I'd say we're probably looking at 20 to 30 into it, so possibly all in about 50,000 on this house. And it's like an in-town 2-story, 2-bed, 1-bath. but we're hoping that our flip will potentially anywhere from 100 to 120. So we're hoping to make quite a bit on that one and get out of the long-term rental business before even getting into it. But potentially maybe 1031 exchange that into another short-term rental in the area, since we've already purchased the other one, and unfortunately can't do that with the remodel costs. So might look at adding another property before the end of the year.
It sounds like you guys have a lot cooking, and again, I love the idea of like trying to stay in one lane, figuring that out first, and then diving off in a different direction, right? And I think you guys are right there. Are there systems, like what are things that are keeping you guys sane? Because I feel like, again, new baby around, running a pharmacy, running rehabs for all week, and like what things are you guys using to keep you sane? Because I guarantee you there's somebody driving their car right now that's like, they can't possibly ever work. Like, where do they find the time for all this stuff? So like what's keeping you guys on track?
Well, with the pharmacies, we have decided that we needed to hire some staff pharmacists. So that was a big decision for both stores, especially the new one that we just purchased. The cash flow is tight there. So making the decision to hire on a staff pharmacist there was a big one. But ultimately it keeps me now from having to go up there maybe once a week. So that, definitely opens up our weeks to be able to work on these rentals now. Whereas when we started with this one, we were working 4 to 5 days a week in the pharmacy, spending our weekends at the rental. And we were getting burnout, needless to say. But, we still enjoyed the rehab. We enjoyed everything that came with it. So we wanted to make that work a little bit better. So we moved our schedules around, hired some people, and still are positive on the pharmacies. So we'll take that as a win. And then with the Airbnbs and the houses, a couple of things. So like just, we were very hands-on at first, because the bookings weren't all the time per se. We had some gaps. We were probably about 50 to 60% occupied. So it was easier. We were our sole cleaners. We probably went through 5 cleaners so far. And, being in rural PA, there are not cleaning companies around here that we can just, pawn off onto. So that was a trial and error. So we finally have found ourselves a reliable cleaner. So hopefully with us adding these properties, helps to keep her with us too. And then, so we finally nailed down a cleaner. So that has taken off a lot of stress. So we're not cleaning after every turnover. Airbnb has like automated messages. It's amazing how much time that takes up or frees up, I guess. But they, send our check-in, check-out messages for us. So I don't have to forget or be like, oh my gosh, I never sent them their check-in message this morning. So it takes a lot of stress off. And then something that I would say has been very helpful for us has been price labs. Because we've really utilized price labs for both of our properties now, and that has brought in way more money than we would have ever anticipated charging our house for. And it's probably been the goat of this entire thing. It was just, we never would have imagined our nightly rates being where they are now, and we never would have put them there without using price labs. And for $30 a month, it's more than enough paid for itself over and over and over again.
So I'd be curious if you could walk us through that one just a little bit, the price labs and some of the strategy in trying to price a unit to maximize revenue. Because I think that there's some nuance there as people are getting into short-term rentals that I've heard often about. Like, people are just lost on where to price things, and they end up taking a shot in the dark, and it works or it doesn't. So could you just, for those that may be unfamiliar, walk through price labs and some of the other tools like that and how that works?
With the analysis.
You better take that.
So there's 2 sides to price labs. So There's like the analysis tool where you put in your address, or it's been a while, it might just be a zip code. But regardless, it pulls the area, your general area, and then it shows you what other people are charging. It shows you by the bed, by the bath, a couple different options, but you can pretty much pick and choose to what looks like your property. And then you can see what other locals are charging. So like we had said, there wasn't very many other comps to look at per se. So it was a little bit of a shot in the dark, but we were also just kind of thinking personally, since we travel a lot, what would we be willing to pay for a place like this? So I would say our thought was, when starting, we were thinking a base rate of like $150, doing it nightly, doing an increase for holidays throughout the summer. So Memorial, July 4th, Labor Day, doing a little bit of an increase there. But Price Labs just far like exceeded what we would ever price. So like I said, we were thinking 150. Now we're seeing our weekends upwards of, 350 to 450 a night for a 2-bed, 1-bath in the middle of nowhere. We are riverfront, so we'll take that. But it just exceeded our expectations. So I guess that other side, I'm straying a little bit. That other side of Price Labs is it pulls those comps that we talked about, and it moves your pricing every day. So every 24 hours, Price Labs updates your pricing on any booking feature. So whether you use Airbnb, Vrbo, I think Booking.com, a bunch of other ones, but we just have Airbnb and Vrbo listings. So every 24 hours, it reevaluates what everybody else in your area is doing. Are they occupied? Are the dates open? Are they highly sought after? Are they holidays? A bunch of other stuff. So they look at all these different factors in their algorithm, and then they put out a price that they feel, suits your property. So that also goes with, like I said, we were getting $350, $400 nights. If those were booked, last week or the week before or whatever, they pull that in as well and say, well, we're going to price you a little bit higher than your other $200 comps because people are paying for it. So, and then it adjusts. So the closer you get to your date, the prices go down because you want to fill those dates. But honestly, the beginning part of the summer, we were full. We're in this month, actually, July, this has been our first 100% occupant month. So we had every day booked in July thus far. But we were pretty close to that. We were 95% the past couple months. And we both just looked at each other and were like, we hate to charge more, but we think we need to charge more because it's just too much. Like even just general maintenance, like we can't get in to do it because we didn't have the open days to be able to get to the house. So it was a good problem to have. But, Price Labs did that for us because never in my wildest dreams would I have ever priced our 2-bedroom, 1-bath at $400 per night and expect somebody to pay it.
Yeah, so I think all we do is send our minimum and maximum, and it just fluctuates in there between. I know Airbnb, some people don't like their dynamic pricing is because it'll go too low.
Yeah, so we really never used Airbnb's pricing tool, just from reading on the forums and whatnot that a lot of people didn't like it. So we jumped right into Price Labs, and we've loved it so far.
It does sound like an awesome problem to have, right? Like you are booked super far and super solid bookings at really good price to make sure you're maximizing this. And one of the things that you're doing is you're leveraging tools that are out there so that it doesn't have to distract you and take a ton of time off for you to look at everybody else's listing and manually make adjustments or things like that. So I love this, the systems that you're building and the efficiencies that you're building into this process with short-term rentals. It's helping you to grow this more and more. So I'm curious then, what's next? Are you looking for more short-term rentals, or are you trying to get to 30 short terms, or what's the play from here?
I think Megan took some notes here, and she said maybe we were going to be done at 4 for a while, but that I don't think that's my goal. I don't have a number in mind, but keep doing it as much as we can do it and locally, and really get familiar with the bit. We didn't think this was necessarily going to be a business, but it's definitely turning into a business. And then we do like to travel, so hopefully we get comfortable enough that we can start having short-term rentals that are, out of our local area. Some destinations that we want to go. I mean, we love being here, but we love to travel as well. So bring on some more.
Love it. I love it.
I love it. Well, I want to jump now to our final infusion questions. 3 questions we ask every guest on the show. The very first one, as always, is what's one tangible strategy? And again, I think you guys have shared a couple already, but what's one tangible strategy that you use to make sure that your investing works hand in hand with your career as a pharmacist?
Yeah. Sorry. Just to keep flexibility. So we can work in the pharmacy and then work on these projects as we have time, I guess, is the biggest thing. And ultimately, I think, we get burnt out in the pharmacy. So having these side projects makes us better everywhere for everybody. Our patients at the pharmacy, our Airbnb hosts, each other. I just think it helps everything.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably the biggest thing is just the ability to be flexible and not feel pressured to get a project done per se. I mean, we pressure ourselves, but there's no deadline to hit. There's no loan hanging over our heads, at least not right now. So that's been one big thing, is just like he said, when we get a little bit frustrated in one area, we can resort to the other and stick to that for a couple weeks, and then we can come back. So that's just been probably a lifesaver for both of us. Or when we get frustrated, we like to work in different rooms. We don't work on the same project. So
Nice to be able to put one thing down and move to the other thing. I think that there's a lot of value in that, and it's not often said. So that's a good one.
thanks.
Yeah. And even when you're done drywalling, to go to the pharmacy and stop drywalling, right? Like that balance of being able to do all kinds of different things can be definitely refreshing. So
Yes,
what's one resource that's been most helpful to you in your real estate journey, whether that's a book, a podcast, a person, author, website, whatever that would be?
Well, I mean, we kind of were already on our soapbox about price labs, but, we said that maybe this is not the most helpful tool, but it's one that we didn't really expect to be as helpful as it was. So utilizing price labs, and we probably haven't even utilized it to the fullest extent that's possible, but using its analysis side to kind of figure out what our area is like, and then using the pricing side to delve into those prices that we're getting for our nightly rates that we would have never even imagined in the beginning has been truly remarkable. We're getting 2 to 3 times what we would have ever imagined. So, when we look at that $60,000 goal that we had, we potentially could have been at 20 if we weren't using Price Lab. So it's definitely been a huge deal. And like I said, one that we really didn't expect to be that big of a deal, but it's definitely been a big deal.
Great tip. All right. And then what's one piece of advice you'd give to a pharmacist contemplating a start in real estate investing?
It's definitely worth looking into. I mean, it's something that you have to look to yourself to see what you're capable of doing or what you want to do. But you don't want to overextend yourself financially or time-wise. I mean, if you're somebody that needs a lot of downtime and doesn't want to do some of the sweat equity work, you might have to analyze your situation a little bit more. But from our experience, we've kind of went out on a limb for all of this, but it's been totally worthwhile. And I think there's opportunities anywhere and everywhere you look, I think.
Yeah, and I would say, real estate investing is kind of, it's getting out there. A lot more people talking about it, and it's not always like roses and chocolates, So I think the decision to do it needs to be more than just the money coming in or the paycheck. Like, I think you really need to decide that it's something that you are committed to doing and that you feel strongly about. So one big thing, which we didn't touch on earlier, but our drive in doing this house was, we grew up in this area and we've slowly seen, the houses not be taken care of anymore. The enrollment in our local schools have declined. People are moving out of the area because there aren't jobs here for these 700 residents, that reside. So people are moving and they're moving to the jobs. So if we're able to, increase the appreciation on some of the real estate here and, maybe draw in some people to the area, and we forgot to talk
create
about
a couple jobs too.
Yeah. And we even had a short-term renter that was like, are you guys doing any other houses? We're potentially looking to move and we love this area now. So if you're doing like a short-term or a long-term rental, we'd be interested in renting for us. So just things like that. So, we really love our hometown and, trying to bring business in and help to bring the economy up has been a big piece of our why as to why we've done it also. So.
That's awesome. I love that focus on the community. I'm sure that there's something you could share. We're out of time, but I want to have you back to share those things that aren't chocolates and roses, because there's plenty of those. And I think we need to do a show on like just that reality of things that aren't chocolate and roses in real estate, because it's a plentiful list, right? But
yeah, I'm sure you could go on for days.
Right.
Yeah, we have a couple sewer backups we could talk about.
Right.
Oh man. So how can people find you if they want to reach out or if they want to stay at one of your properties?
So you have our listings. We can, post on those. We do have like a Facebook that we're trying to kind of build. So you can find us at Dreher Real Estate. It's our last name, Dreher Real Estate. So we do have a Facebook and an Instagram page for that. And then we also have an email, so dreherrealestate@gmail.com, and you can shoot us a message there. We can send you anything for direct booking if you don't want to book through Airbnb, or if you have any questions or anything like that, we'd be more than happy to try to talk to you. And we're still newbies too, so you could probably teach us something as well. But more than happy to answer any questions if anybody wants to reach out.
If you stop in Emlenton, you can probably find us.
Yeah,
just head to the pharmacy or head to the river, right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Meghan, Matt, really, really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing your story. It's been awesome to talk to you guys, and I'm serious about taking a look at that property when we're done here. So keep an eye out for my booking to come across.
Okay, awesome. We'll be happy to have you. You can send me an email and we'll direct book.
All right, that sounds good. That sounds even better.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. If you like what you heard on today's show, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, know someone that would make a good guest, or want to connect with Nate or David, head on over to yfprealestate.com and join the growing YFP Real Estate Investing Facebook group. As we conclude this week's episode of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast, an important reminder that the content in this podcast is provided to you for your informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on this podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist, unless otherwise noted, and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you for your support of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.